You're a 5-year-old boy in a filthy East Blue port town, and a hook-handed stranger with a cigar clenched in her teeth just knocked your bully flat on his back without breaking stride. You don't know her name yet. Nobody does. She showed up on the last ship out of the New World with sand under her fingernails and a look on her face like she'd already buried 3 different lives. She didn't ask for you, she didn't want you. But somehow, you were hers now. This isn't canon, let's be upfront about that. Nobody in the actual story has ever confirmed who gave birth to Monkey D. Luffy. It's the biggest open wound in One Piece, and Oda has said flat out that he's already drawn her somewhere on a page you've already read, without telling anyone who she is. But what if the internet's favorite unhinged joke was real? What if the warlord who once tried to burn a kingdom to the ground for a weapon buried in the sand was the woman who raised the boy who'd eventually inherit the will to be free? Here's what that life might have looked like. Every fact about who Crocodile really is, the hand, the fruit, the fall, the war, stays true. Only the family tree gets rewritten. Before she was anyone's mother, she was a girl with a dream too big for the ocean to hold. She set out young, the way all the great ones do, chasing a title, Pirate King, that's chewed up better dreamers than her and spat out their bones. The dream ended against a wall of a man named Edward Newgate. Whitebeard didn't just beat her, he took her hand, left her with a hook where fingers used to be, and a silence where the dream used to live. Some people, after a loss like that, go quiet. She went cold. She stopped chasing conquest out in the open and started chasing power in the shadows. The kind you don't see coming until it's already inside your walls. She found a devil fruit that let her become the desert itself. Sand that swallows blades. Sand that drinks the moisture out of a man until he's a husk on the ground. She built a criminal empire and wore a warlord's title like armor, using the world government's own protection to hide a plot to rip a kingdom's throne out from under a king who trusted his people more than his instincts. That's the woman. That's Crocodile. None of that changes in this story. What changes is this, somewhere in the gap between the hand she lost and the empire she built. In a version of this world that only exists in the space between what if and what really happened, she crossed paths with a baby who had no mother. Picture it, a woman who dehydrates men for looking at her wrong, standing over a basket on a doorstep in a town she was only passing through, staring down at a kid with a scar that hadn't happened yet and eyes that were already too big for his face. Every instinct in her told her to walk away. Warlords do not carry infants. Ambitions like hers do not have room for lullabies. The cigar smoke drifted sideways in the salt air, and she just stood there longer than she should have, staring at something she had no framework to categorize. She almost left him there. That's the story we're telling. Almost. But something about the way his tiny fist curled around her hook instead of flinching from it made her pause on the step a half-second longer than she meant to. "You're going to be a problem," she told him, in a voice that hadn't used a soft tone in years and forgot how halfway through the sentence. He just laughed. Babies do that. They laugh at exactly the wrong moment, at exactly the wrong person. And somehow that's what saves them. She didn't adopt him with a ceremony. There was no warmth in the decision, no soft music swelling underneath it. She simply didn't leave. And in her world, in the world Sir Crocodile actually lived in, cold, calculating, allergic to sentiment, not leaving was the loudest kind of love she had left in her. Nobody would call it a childhood. It was closer to basic training with better food. She raised him the way she ran her organization, through structure, through consequence, through a complete refusal to explain herself twice. He learned to read a room before he could read a word. He learned that her silences had weather patterns. And if you were smart, you learned to check the forecast before you opened your mouth. She never told him bedtime stories about heroes. She told him about kings who lost kingdoms because they trusted the wrong people, about how the ones who survive the longest in this world are the ones who see the knife before it's drawn. He'd sit cross-legged on the floor of whatever hideout they were using that season, chin in his hands, half listening, half plotting his own escape to go looking for adventure the second her back was turned. He escaped a lot. She always found him. "You went looking for trouble again," she said once, dragging him back by the collar of a shirt 3 sizes too big for him, sand still clinging to both of them from whatever fight had happened 5 minutes before she got there. "Trouble found me," he said, grinning with a gap where a tooth used to be. Trouble doesn't find anyone. People walk toward it and call it fate afterward. She said it like she was reciting something she'd learned the hard way, back when she still had 2 hands and a dream that hadn't been ground into the dirt yet. He didn't understand her, not really. Not the hook, not the silences, not the way she'd stare out at the ocean some nights like she was arguing with a version of herself that had made different choices. But he understood that she came back. Every time. Whatever else she was building in the dark corners of her world, the schemes, the syndicate, the throne she wanted to steal out from under a desert kingdom, she came back for him. That's the part of Crocodile the story never gets to show. The part where a woman capable of draining a man dry without blinking would sit outside a door at night, just to make sure a boy's breathing stayed even. She never once called herself his mother, not out loud. The word didn't fit in her mouth. She was something closer to a storm that decided against every instinct it had, to curve around one particular house instead of leveling it. There's a version of this story where the timelines actually cross, and it's the cruelest version, so let's tell it. By the time he was old enough to leave for good, she was deep into the plan that would define her. A kingdom of sand and sun. A king who ruled with too much trust and not enough suspicion. And a powder that could be smuggled in small enough doses that nobody would notice the sky forgetting how to rain. 3 years of drought, engineered in silence, dressed up as bad luck. A civil war built out of thirsty people, and a king who didn't yet know he'd been framed. She never told the boy what she was building. He was gone by then anyway, off chasing his own ocean, his own crew, his own promise to become something the whole world would have to reckon with. She let him go the way she let everything go that couldn't be controlled. Quietly, and with the hook-hand version of a goodbye, which is to say, none at all. He didn't recognize her right away. How could he? The woman who raised him in scattered years and stormy silences was gone. In her place stood a warlord in a fur coat, smoke curling off a cigar, sand shifting where a hand should be, orchestrating a kingdom's collapse for a weapon buried under its capital. "You," she said, and something in her voice cracked in a way it hadn't cracked in years, right before she buried it again. "Do I know you?" he asked, rubber fist already cocked back, rain starting to needle down around both of them like the sky had picked a side. She didn't answer. Some things are too big to say out loud in the middle of a fight you're about to lose. They fought exactly the way canon says they fought, twice in the same streets, under the same government's blind eye. Sand that swallowed his punches whole, a body that couldn't be grabbed, couldn't be burned, couldn't be beaten by anything that wasn't water. He nearly broke against her the first time. It wasn't losing to a stranger. In our story, some small, wordless part of him already knew this wasn't a stranger's cruelty. It was something older, something that used to sit outside a door at night just to hear him breathe. The rain in the final fight wasn't just weather, it was the mechanism, the one thing that could turn Sand back into a person who could finally be touched, finally be hit, finally be beaten. He landed the punch that ended it, ended her kingdom, her ambitions, her decade of careful, cold-blooded architecture. She hit the ground harder than Sand should ever fall. She never told him. Not while she was rotting in the harshest level of an undersea prison built to break people slower than a quick death would. Not during the breakout when the whole rotten machine of that place came apart at the seams and Ace's brother tore through it like a hurricane looking for family. Not once in all that chaos did the woman who might have raised him say the word son out loud. Maybe she thought it would cost her something to say it. Maybe after everything, the hand, the fall, the empire built out of spite and sand, she'd simply forgotten how to hand anything to anyone without expecting it to be used against her later. Some wounds calcify, they stop bleeding and start becoming part of the skeleton. But then the war came, the one that swallowed a war hero whole and rewrote what everyone thought they knew about loyalty. And in the middle of that fire and blood and a magma-fisted admiral bearing down on a boy who had no business surviving that battlefield, she moved. Canon says her hatred of the Marines outweighed any leftover grudge she carried. Canon says it wasn't love. And in the true story, that's exactly right. It wasn't love, not the kind you'd recognize from a distance. But in this story, standing shoulder to shoulder with men from a crew that wasn't hers, Sand whipping into a wall between a boy and an admiral's fist. Something old and buried cracked open in her chest for just long enough to matter. "Move!" she barked at him, the way she used to bark it at a boy tracking Sand through her hideout. He didn't move, he never did, so she moved for him, the way she used to sit outside a door listening for breathing. Except this time the door was a battlefield, and the breathing was a boy who'd grown into exactly the kind of problem she told him he'd be all those scattered years ago. She never said it. Not then, not after, not on the deck of the ship that would eventually carry her into a new empire. Crocodile went on to become exactly who canon says she became. And somewhere out on a different ocean, a boy who never learned who his mother really was kept sailing anyway, kept laughing at exactly the wrong moment. kept surviving on nothing but instinct and a memory of a hook that once curled, just barely, just once, around the edge of a doorframe to make sure he was still breathing. None of this happened. Say it with me one more time because it matters. Luffy's mother has never been named. Not by Oda, not on any page, not in this timeline or any other. This was a what-if built entirely out of love for a joke the internet's been running with for years. Nothing more, nothing less. But maybe that's exactly why it works, because somewhere underneath the sand and the smoke and the cigar smoke curling off a warlord who tried to burn a kingdom down, there's a version of Crocodile who almost knew how to love something that wasn't power. We live a lot of lives in this world of ours. One theory, one character, one impossible what-if at a time. If you want to keep living them with us, you know exactly what to do.